What's up YouTube, Capital G here. This is Brenden Beckman's top 32 deck from YCS Indy. It's Geartown, and I would have did this video yesterday, but I was unaware that any Geartown's topped. It looks like the Machina version, the all-machine version of Geartown is starting to be the definitive version of the deck, which in my opinion seems pretty smart right now because not only did you get an added boost from Gear Giant X, which you actually can make in this deck. All you need is for a Machina Gear Frame to survive one turn and, you know, possibly summon another one the next turn. But, I mean, it allows you to run game-stealing cards. You guys know how much I like that. You know, cards like Limiter Removal, which in this deck is the definition of a game-stealing card. It is literally summon Malefic Cyber attack, activate Limiter. That's 8,000 damage. It really doesn't matter how you spin it. Another thing about this deck versus the other old versions and maybe why they weren't as successful, when you were running Beast Kings and when you were running trade-ins and all that stuff, I mean, the deck functioned nicely, but it didn't have the same efficiency with the next card as this deck has. I mean, every single machine in this deck, every card in this deck, every monster can be pitched to summon a potentially, you know, dead fortress that maybe your opponent torrential. So if you end up having those gadget dragons in your hand, where is, you know, that's the last place you want them, but you can end up just ditching them and then summoning fortress that way. So that definitely solves one of the bigger problems of the deck. Okay, the deck list is as follows: 3 copies of Malefic Cyber and Dragon, 3 Karkar-D, 3 Machina Gear Frame, 3 Fortress, 1 Cannon, those can all be searched by Gear Frame, 2 copies of Gadgetron Dragon, 1 Cyber Dragon, 3 copies of Terraforming, 3 Geartowns, and 2 Necro Valleys. That's all pretty standard in any Geartown variant. 2 Dualities, 1 Limiter Removal, 1 Book of Moon, 1 Heavy Storm, 1 Forbidden Lance, 3 copies of Evac Device, 3 copies of Skill Drain, 3 Dark Bribe, 1 Seven Tools, 1 Solemn, 1 Starlight Road, and 1 Fiendish Chain. I said earlier, the fact that everything is a machine in this deck, it makes it a lot easier to get multiple uses out of Machina Fortress, because, you know, it can attack into a Mirror Force, or there are outs for this. There are outs to this card outside of, you know, Bottomless and Deep Prison, so on and so forth. I'm not so high on his use of Cyber Dragon. It seems like just a little potentially risky. I mean, if you summon Cyber Dragon, you really can't summon any other monsters with it on board. Otherwise, you have the potential, or you have the possibility of your opponent making a Chimera Fortress Dragon, using it against you. Also, if you're playing against, and he said this, he lost against two Geargia decks. I mean, I imagine if you have Cyber Dragon at any point of the game on the field, they just summon, you know, any of their Geargias and they can just instantly contact. But anytime you can combine Skill Drain and Dark Bribes and max out on them, I think that you're going to have a very good opportunity to screw up a lot of the meta. I mean, that matchup should be kind of favorable outside of the whole contact fusing thing, just because of Skill Drain. I mean, they don't really have an answer to that. Windups don't have an answer to that. Samurai doesn't. I mean, Dark World might be a problem, but, you know, when it comes to decks like Heroes and whatnot that aren't adversely affected by Skill Drain, I mean, let's just be real. If you get a Gadgetron Dragon on the field, it's just going to beat over anything in Heroes, you know, so I don't really see that being that big of a problem. The 7 Tools was definitely good because it stops simple stuff. You know, you summon a Malefic Cyber and your opponent wants the Bottomless, you know, you 7 Tools it. Okay, well, now they can't use Warning because it's already on the field. Next thing you know, you're punching 2 attacks later and it's like, good game. This is one of the cards that I think really helped him out throughout the day. Karkar-D. This deck has a serious problem with starting out slow. Karkar-D could potentially change that. I mean, if you have the Skill Drain set, how much damage can your opponent really do? Like, the reason that you don't run Solemns in this deck, or Solemn Warnings, and the reason you don't run a lot of defense is because this deck is meant, much like Dark World, to take some direct attacks, but then drop a 3K beater and just beat over whatever the hell your opponent summoned. So Karkar-D definitely gets him the cards that he needs, and I think that it was pretty smart to run 3 copies. Not to mention, it's a machine, so with Gear Giant X, you can actually search it straight from the deck. And then there might be like those random times where you summon it and your opponent might like Veiler it or something like that, and oh, you can use it with Limiter, you know what I mean? Another thing is, if you for some reason can't, you know, if you just want to keep pushing for game and you don't want to waste your normal summon, you can always pitch this to summon the Fortress back. So definitely smart there. Evac works perfectly in this deck because, again, your opponent Veilers like Karkar-D, you can bounce it to your hand. Your opponent, you know, tries to Bottomless your Malefic or your Machina Fortress, you can just bounce those cards to your hand, and it's a quick out to problem cards for this deck. Monsters on the board like Fossil Dyna, and then you can just summon this after Fossil Dyna is out. Maybe you have Skill Drain or something, so on and so forth after that. So I think that this deck is really solid. I could see him probably starting slow. I would definitely cut this deck down to probably 41 cards. Maybe drop like the Fiendish Chain and the Cyber Dragon. Those seem just a little cluttery because with 43 cards, it's just always a little too much for my liking. But let me know what you guys think of the deck. Definitely one of the more interesting decks, and I only try and pick interesting decks for these type of segments. Thank you guys for watching as always.